What's up, y'all? Welcome to season two, first episode of a couple of subs. I'm your host, Cody Crane. With me, as always, my lovely co-host, Kiki.
What's up, y'all? Thanks for tuning in. We are on season two. I cannot believe that season one is done already.
I know it. It's been a great ride. We appreciate all the support y'all have given us. It's been awesome.
Y'all have been incredible. And thank y'all for the feedback. Thank you for always, liking and sharing and subscribing. This means a lot to us. This is something that we've started organically, just him and I literally sitting on our couch right now. So Thank you for the support and welcome to season two. Anyway, let's get right into this.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the show, Justin. Thanks for being on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your company, Anderson Glass.
Yeah, for sure. Born and raised in Waco, a little bit south of Waco in a town called Lorena. I've lived here my entire life. Love it. Don't know that I'll ever see myself anywhere else. Went to high school, thought I was going to be a physical therapy guy, athletic trainer guy, blew my knee out playing football in high school and was like, this is cool. I wanted to be around it. Was going to college and in retail, shockingly enough. Moved into retail management at like 19, 20, did very, very well. Found out I was making more money doing that than I would have being around, athletic training and physical therapy. Stopped the whole school thing, focused on that. And then around 2001, I was 21 or so, 22. I was in between looking at moving to Dallas, and my dad hit me up and was like, hey, I need some help. And I had been around the glass industry my entire life, growing up. Anytime my needed help, I was there, so I wanted to learn it and I did, and I knew it. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'll come help you. And I haven't left. I'm still here doing it. So, that's kind of the long story short for the glass side and for me. But, further back on the glass side, I'm a third generation glass guy, but the company is second generation now. So my grandfather did like commercial glazing, but for the most part, he installed stained glass windows all over the country. So that was kind of his thing. Yeah, very cool backstory. And then my dad just worked with him kind of like I did, but didn't work with him for long. He kind of realized that my grandfather was kind of a tough old dude to work with and for, no sleeping in the truck and all these different rules. And so my dad, worked for some companies here and there. And then in 1988, the building industry took a pretty rough shot here in Waco, and he got laid off. He was the highest paid guy on the payroll. So, how that works out. So he got laid off, and he took $200 and got my mom's blessing and started Anderson Glass.
Wow.
Awesome. Yeah. We're going to dive into it a little bit later on, but we actually, are both in our family's businesses also. I'm a fourth generation. She's second generation. Mm-hmm. And so
there's pros and cons to that for sure. It can be both a blessing and a curse.
For sure. Yeah. But I think there's something special about jumping into a family business. I don't think it means today what it used to mean. And so for people that are still doing it, I think it's a really cool, I don't know, man, it's nostalgic. I like it. I think it's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can remember getting that call from my dad about 2010, and he's like, keep your phone close. Like, I need some help. Time to come home.
And you hadn't left since, have you?
Oh, no, been wide open ever since and love it.
Yeah, that's the way it works out, And my dad was great at the glass business, but he was really lacking from the business side. So that experience I got in retail management kind of just flowed over. It was almost school for me for the glass industry. So I sat down with him. I actually went to him and I was like, hey, there's some things that you should change. Like he was writing down job stuff on napkins or lottery tickets. And lottery tickets were my favorite because he'd hand it to you and he'd be like, hey, that's a winner. I need it back. And what am I supposed to do with this? So he'd go cash in. You have to go measure the whole job again. So I made a list and I was like, hey, I've got all this stuff that I think that you could do. And he's like, why don't you just buy in and help me with it? And so I agreed, not reluctantly, but I kind of knew that if I didn't, he wouldn't retire at any decent age.
Right.
So that's kind of how I jumped into it.
So you're president now, correct?
Yeah, I bought him out. I bought in 2001. I've got an older brother who actually works with Anderson Glass now, but I bought in 2001, and then I bought my dad out in 2014 so that he could retire.
All
Awesome.
right, rocking and rolling.
She works with her older brothers, and me and my brother are now president, vice president of FL Crane. So,
How do you guys get along with that? Is it pretty good? Pretty, is it rough? It's got its moments.
me and my brother actually work great together. It's a blessing. He's really, really, really good at the business and the finance and making sure all insurance and everything's covered. And he always watches the numbers, and that frees me up to spend more time out in the field, which that's what I love to do. So, I mean, we work great together. I don't get into his business, and he lets me do my thing, and it works out great.
That's a good partnership. That works out. Yeah.
Yeah, playing off what he said. So I have two older brothers. I'm the youngest, and we all three have different strengths and different weaknesses. Thank God. So it works out, pretty well because we stay in our lanes, And sure, there's tough times. Absolutely. I mean, I'd be lying to you. Anybody would be lying to you if they said that there weren't tough times working in a family business. But all in all, it's very rewarding. So very cool. Well, hey, look. One of the obvious questions is, how in the world did you become Chip and Joanna Gaines's preferred glass company off of Fixer Upper? I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's an interesting story actually. I kind of have a mentality of just saying yes, and that's gotten me in trouble a lot of times in life. But at the same time, it's opened some crazy doors. So 2008, 2009, there was some crazy stuff going on. If you guys remember this or not, but we had some stuff going on where there was some lending issues, and we started having some mortgage companies going back and taking houses away from people. So there was this housing crisis that was taking place in our country, and the new building industry was taking a huge hit, and we saw it coming from a construction standpoint. If you didn't see it coming, you were blind. So we sat down and we talked, and we're like, what are people going to do? They're not going to be able to get loans to go get new houses, So my dad and I talked, and we're like, we just need to hit up remodelers hot and heavy. So we went after remodelers, pretty hard. And at that time we were small. There was, I don't know, 3 guys plus my dad and a girl in the office. So it was a pretty small company. We had enough material and enough work to get a job done. And that was it for whatever that day was. So if you messed up something on the fabrication side, so from a glass standpoint, you get it, you go out there and you break a piece of glass. That's it. If there's no stock, you can't go to Home Depot and pick up that new piece.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just had the right amount of material to do the right amount of work. And I don't know exactly what happened, but I had an issue one day where I couldn't get the jobs done that I needed to go out on. And the phone rang, and this guy said, hey, I'm waiting on a glass company to show up and look at replacing some broken windows, a couple of panes, nothing big. But it's been 2 weeks and I haven't heard from him. And I was like, well, I've got an opening today, so I'll just come over there right now if that works. He's like, that'd be great. And I walked in the door, and there's some pretty decently new DeWalt tools and a brand new kids DeWalt, toy set laying there on the floor, and walked in and had a conversation with the guy and quoted the job right there. And he said, do it. And we had it knocked out in 2 days, and that got Chip Gaines. So, lucky for us, we kept them happy for the years that, followed, and they ended up on TV, and we kind of lucked out and ended up on TV with them.
So good customer service. That's all it took.
For sure. And I'm not really one of those guys that believes in luck, but if I do, I guess it was pretty lucky of us to get that phone call that day, or lucky enough that the other company, was too busy to get to him, for those 2 or 3 weeks. And they're still in town too. They're still doing plenty of work. So it worked out for them as well.
So how long have y'all, it's so interesting to me, the fact that, y'all are doing work like we do every day, but you're getting followed around by cameras and stuff. And I've never been on any kind of a TV show set or anything, but I can only imagine that's one more thing to cause confusion and stuff out there.
Yeah, it adds some pressure. From a standpoint, you sign paperwork that just basically says, look, whatever you guys film is good. You don't get a say-so in what they're going to use and what they don't. I think we all kind of learned from this Tiger King thing that you may go into one deal thinking it's going to be one thing, and it turns out to be something different. So, we signed this paperwork, and we gave them the release. And, when you show up and it's your day, you better be prepared. But at the same time, I mean, you guys know how construction goes, and being a subcontractor, if somebody didn't do their thing right before you, or maybe your guys and girls in the office didn't do their thing right, or somebody down the road, from the supply chain messed you up. It doesn't, you never know what that thing might be, but if they catch it on camera, you can stand there and look like you don't know what you're doing pretty quick. And so that part was a little rough, but for the most part, I think it all played out for us. There was a couple of times where I had some issues. We had a real short lead time on some windows for a job where they needed to raise, and I didn't have time to order them, so we just built them. And I don't know anything about these compression, these gas pump, hinges. And so we're trying to get it in the store, swinging open fast. And, or if I turn them around, as it closes, it's slamming. We're in trouble. And the producers, they're filming it. I mean, this is all going down. And I'm just kind of standing there like, what am I going to do? Chip's like, let's do one up and one down. And I was like, I don't know if that's going to work, but let's try it. And they got it all on camera. And of course they used it, and they didn't make me look too bad. It, kind of looked like Chip said, and the truth of the matter is he probably did, but that's just kind of the way it works. So it was added pressure for sure, but it was fun. The whole process was fun. And that production team was incredible. I was a good group of people that I'm still friends with to this day. And so it was a fun ride, man. I'm glad I got to be a part of it.
Yeah. That's one thing, for guys like us that are in the industry, watching that show, it shows those speed bumps that happen and the things that come up, and you just got to work around the problem and, get the job done. And that's one reason I like watching it, because it's not like everything just happens perfectly. It shows it how it really happens.
Sure. And there's probably more issues that took place on some of those builds that we never even saw, behind the scenes type stuff. Cause you get it. Construction's rough. And there's times where you go to put something in, and again, whoever was in front of you maybe didn't do it right. And you're, what am I going to do with this? And that's, so yeah, it was true to form for sure.
So, how long have you been doing that with them?
Great. Well, we did every house for the most part. There was, I think, 5 seasons altogether. So we did every aspect of it. And then we stopped filming. I think it's been 2 years now. So we did the whole shooting match from top to bottom, and we're still doing work for them. There's odds and ends that's happening. I guess obviously right now in this slice of time, things have slowed down pretty dramatically for everybody. But prior to viruses and crazy times in our country, we're still doing work for them.
So, having done that for 5 seasons, what kind of exposure did that give you, or did it open up other doors for more customers at Anderson Glass?
Sure. Yeah, I think from a standpoint of giving the glazing industry some limelight was pretty much my goal, at least for the last 2 seasons. The first 2 seasons we were on camera a little bit. My guys and girls were there, and we were on camera, but it wasn't a lot. By season 3, we're like, hey guys, we can do a whole lot more. If you can dream it, we'll build it. Send me pictures, I'll make it happen. And that's when we started getting on the show a little bit more and getting a little bit more aspects of what exactly we do. So, from the glazing industry standpoint, it kind of was cool. I've gotten an opportunity to, I don't want to say be the face for the glazing industry, but be a face for the glazing industry.
Yeah,
and I'm a champion for that, for this industry. I mean, this is, again, is my dad's industry, it's my grandfather's industry. It's important to me, and I want to see it continue for as long as it can possibly continue. I know that someday robots will do all this for us, and we've already got manipulators and things like that make our jobs easier. But in the meantime, I wanted to give some open credit to what we do as an industry. I don't think we get a lot of we didn't get a lot of limelight prior to that on these shows. So that was my first goal. And the exposure was, I get phone calls all the time. Hey, this guy wants you to call him back. He's got a question about switchable tint. We used it in a door on one of the episodes, and so it cleared to opaque. And I probably have answered more questions about that one thing than anything else. So, it gave me an opportunity to speak to our industry, which is fun. I really enjoy that. It gave me an opportunity to answer questions to folks that don't necessarily know how this thing works or what the best thing is for them. From a business standpoint, it kind of went both directions. I had some builders and remodelers here in town that, would get upset. Hey, where's my shower door? And, hey, 7 to 10 business days. That's kind of the average right now. Oh, I bet if I put on TV, get a little quicker, wouldn't you? And some of those kind of harsh jabs and comments. And I'm sure that, our customer service side took a couple of hits here and there. And And, we were jumping through hoops to make production happen, but that's what you have to do in those situations. I mean, I had a lot of buddies that are subcontractors that stopped doing work on the show because they just couldn't meet the demands. And they would flat out tell you like, oh man, it's just so hard. And I'm like, it is, but you got to treat it like it is what it is instead of something else. So, from a business standpoint, it was good, but it was also bad. I lost some folks that I'd done work for a long time, and that hurt, and I hated that. And I don't have a product that can be shipped all over the country. Glass is not anything to put in a box and ship halfway across the country. So from that standpoint, we try to just champion the industry. Hey, find a local glass company. If they've got questions, have them call us. And that's been cool. I think that's from a standpoint of doing right by the industry. I think that we had a cool opportunity to do that. And I think we've done an okay job at it.
Haven't you spoken at like the National Glass Association, their conventions and conferences and stuff like that? You've done that, right?
Yeah, I've done a ton of speaking. That's actually my favorite. That's my favorite part of the whole thing. If I got to pick what my favorite part of coming out of Fixer Upper was, it's getting to go and talk to, whether it's kids. I do a lot of career days, or if it's industry stuff. I get picked on sometimes here and there on some of that stuff, but a lot of times it's, hey, what are you doing to manage this? And I'm by no means a great businessman. I just think I'm okay at it. But I think that's the way most of us are. I think we're all just okay at it. And so if you're telling me what you're good at versus what you're bad at, and I'm doing the same thing, we can work through that together. I think that collaboration works out great. So getting to speak at those events has been my favorite part of the whole thing.
Is that something that like came natural to you, or did you just have to like kind of figure it out as you went as far as the speaking is concerned? Or is that just like you've always been that way, you loved it, and you just kind of took it and ran with it?
That's a loaded question. I think I'm okay at it. But I definitely, like, even to this, and I've gotten to do a lot of speaking. To this day, I still get nervous at the gate. I have to drink a lot of water because I get cotton mouth like that fast. It's crazy. And I'll tell everybody, hey, this is just who I am. So if I stop to get water, don't be upset. This is just what's going to happen. But once I find the groove, then it comes pretty naturally. It's pretty, it's a pretty good flow. And, I used to sit back and count people that would say, how many times did they say, in their speech? And I catch myself all the time doing this. I'm like, golly, this is not as easy as what everybody thinks it is. So one of the cool things I got to do is I got to speak I got to be the commencement speaker at a graduation for the high school that I went to. And it was my 20-year reunion. My oldest daughter was a junior in high school at the time. And so she didn't want me to do it at all. And I was in front of, a couple thousand people. And I'd only been doing speaking engagements for maybe 9 months at that point. So that kind of got me hardened up to, doing these speaking events.
That's awesome. You said you were doing like career days and stuff like that for the youth. I think that it is so important for us to try to bring cool back to the industry. I mean, back in the day, if you're a construction worker, iron worker, whatever it may be, you were cool. You're the tough guy. And somewhere along the line, our industry has lost that cool factor. And I think that would, really help us get more of the younger generations wanting to be in the industry. And
Cody, you're dead on the money, man. And I think what we lack in that, and I think my age group is kind of the bridge for this is, you got guys like my dad who are just old school dudes. And you're right, man. When my dad coached my baseball teams when I was a kid, all my buddies were like, man, your dad's a tough dude. I'm like, yeah, he was built, big old 6'4" guy. I stopped growing at 6 foot, so I don't know where that other 4 inches went, but he's just this big dude, and he's always built really well because he was working his butt off in industry, and he was a bad dude. And I think that part of it is that's not nearly as cool as what it used to be, being a big bad dude. But I think that add the technology that is in our industries, whatever construction side of it is, you can make it cool again. There's a very rad part about what we do, but if you're not showing people that, how are they ever going to know it? And so that's my goal with those career days. I think you're exactly right. You got to show them what's cool. There's always going to be the old dude that can weld. That kid's going to be a welder no matter what. I think that's just the way it is. But there's other kids sitting in that thing that doesn't really know if college is going to be the thing for him. And I'm here to tell them in those career days, look, man, I'm a big advocate of college. Higher education is important. I want my kids to do it. But if they came tomorrow and said, hey, school's not for me, college isn't for me, I'd be okay with that. Like we push these young kids, you got to go to college, got to go to college. And part of my speech when I'm talking to the Glass Association, I'll tell them, man, you know, I'll get people shaking their heads when I'm talking about, you know, higher education and, you know, oh no, you got to go to school. And I'll just stop. Like, how many of you guys have a college degree? And they'll raise their hands. How many of you are working in the field that your degree is in? And unless there's an architect or an engineer in the room, hands are down. And you know, there's nothing wrong with going to school, but at the same time, like you said, you know, we got to catch some of these young kids that don't necessarily know what they want to do and teach them a trade and teach them what loyalty means. And I think we can change the mentality of what we think about young folks right now.
And so aside from Anderson Glass, we know that you have several other business endeavors of your own, including D1 Designs, the Artisan Project, and the Alone Effect. And the Artisan Project really hits on just that. You know, I love that your goal is to show the next generation that there's a career path that you can, you know, use with your hands or can be built with your hands. I think that's awesome. So what, kind of tell us a little bit about that, the Artisan Project.
The Artisan Project is that and the Loan Effect are both just passion pieces. The Artisan Project is one that we're looking to find a home for right now with the production company that I'm working with. And it just came out of the fact that it was a double-edged sword. I'd get phone calls or I'd get emails. Hey man, how'd you get in the industry? You know, how'd you figure out what you wanted to do in construction? I want to see your place. So they wanted the backstory and they wanted to see our offices. I wanted to see our shop, which, you know, I'm the same way. I want to know what your shop looks like constantly. Like, how's that working in the back? And then my oldest lives with me, or she's in college now, but she lived with me for a while she was getting out of high school and going to junior college. And I came home one day from work and she was just on the floor and she was just in tears. I'm like, babe, what's wrong? And she, you know, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So, Haley, I don't know what I want to be if I grow up. So that's okay. You know, just because you've been told this doesn't mean you really got to know it. It's okay. And it just occurred to me, like, she's creative. And I'm like, if you want to do something creative, let's go that route. Well, no, I gotta go to college. And it just occurred to me that, you know, people want to see the backstory. I want to give artisans an opportunity to be seen because I think that's important. I thought it was cool that Fixer Upper gave us that. And if you see, there's a trend. I don't watch a lot of HGTV, but I do watch some of it. Some of those shows are really good and they're really cool. They've started to really highlight different trades. You know, there's Hometown out of Laurel, Mississippi. They've got some trades that just get on there all the time. There's a guy that does floor work for them. I just love that guy. He's just an old school, cool dude. He's the guy you want to drink beer with, but they feature him a lot. And so, you know, I think that's a really cool thing. So for me, I want to catch artisans that don't always get the limelight, you know, somebody that's building, and not just construction either. You know, I want to hang out with people that are, you know, doing wall murals or building, you know, jewelry or whatever that thing is. I want to hang out with all of them. And I want to pair that young person up with them. And even if they don't end up making hats with a hat maker, I don't care. I want you to see that you can go make a living doing this, right. You know, being creative and making stuff with your hands. So that's kind of where that thing came from, and we'll see what happens with it. But it's a passion piece for sure.
I love that idea. I mean, it's just so perfect. And I feel like there's such a stigma in our industry that there's no money associated with building something with your hands. You know, it's like, no, I can't be a plumber or an electrician. You know, they don't make any money, but that is quite contraire. I mean, you know, they're like one of the wealthiest trades in our industry. But
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just curious. Do you see an opportunity maybe with some type of TV show for the Artisan Effect and to, you know, use that, you know, use a TV as an outlet to just kind of step that up and really push for the trades?
Yeah, that's the end goal, is to end up on either a network or a digital platform with it. Awesome. We've looked at doing a full digital series out of it. It's a little costly, you know, to do production right is a lot more expensive than what people think, and so we're looking for a home for it. We've talked to some major outlets. There's a lot of interest around it, but we're kind of in a weird time right now. So I don't know. I'm hoping that, you know, no, so there's really, I don't know if there's a silver lining in all this that we're going through as a country, but I do know that content from what we're watching on television is going to be absorbed pretty quickly through us being all stuck at home for the amount of time that we're stuck at home. And so, maybe a silver lining would be that we do find a place, a good home for this, and we can turn that into some positive stuff for some young folks. Cause I do think it's a worthwhile cause for sure.
So how does that whole process work? Like, you have to just get some buddies with some cameras to kind of get some content and try to sell it to a network, or I know nothing about that.
It's a crazy process. Once you make a TV show like that, you start getting kind of hit up by different folks. I get hit up by a couple of production companies pretty quickly, and they're going to ask you a lot of questions. They want to know if there's a spinoff here. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Clint Hart from Fixer Upper, who's the wood guy.
Oh yeah.
He's had an opportunity to do some show work outside of the show Fixer Upper itself. So you get hit up pretty quickly, and I got hit up by a couple of production companies, but some of the stuff that they talk to you about isn't necessarily, the glass industry is interesting, but there's no longevity in a show there. And so, I really didn't have an idea for them that sat well. And then after being on the show that I was on for a little while, I started seeing those questions, what's your backstory? And people, same thing with Jimmy Don, the metal sign guy, he's a buddy of mine. I love that dude so much. And just constantly wanting people, do you know Jimmy Don? Yeah, I know him. Well, how did he get in the metal? He's got a great story, and somebody needs to tell that story. And so that's kind of where the Artisan project came from. So then I started talking to a couple of production companies from there, and it got fun, it got festive. And I had a company that out of Dallas, Texas, that's just, they're hungry. And I liked the fact that whatever it was that I was kind of putting into words from an idea aspect, they could see it. I could look at their faces and see that they got it. And that was it. I picked them, and, we've made a sizzle reel. And so now it's get the sizzle reel in front of the right, platform, whether it's digital or, an actual network, and try to get it sold. And that's outside of what I know. So they manage all that from here on out.
I love it. We'll support that 100%.
Absolutely.
I think that's
we can
awesome.
do to help, let us know.
Yeah, if you know anybody in at Netflix, hit me up. That's the one I want to get to.
We'll have to get back with you on that one.
Well, they actually did a football series at a local junior college down here, and my buddy's dad's on that junior college board. I bet he would know who to call.
Making the connections.
Yep. Connect the dots.
Yep, connect the dots. That's funny. I forgot about that show. What was it called?
Last
Chance You. Yeah. Yeah, that's like 30 minutes from my hometown, actually. So.
Okay. Yeah, it's crazy because as this stuff happens, there's a cheer show now, I think, on, or it may be already passed, but it was really popular on Netflix, and it's in Corsicana, which is like an hour from Waco, and it's all about this Navarro College cheer team, and it was super popular. My kids were talking about, like, you guys know that's like an hour away, right? They're like, it is. Yeah. So we're all getting tied into TV real fast. It's crazy. And what it does for a small town is insane. I mean, it's just, it'll change everything that fast.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us a little bit about your D1 Designs. That's a design consulting agency, is that right?
D1 is cool, man. D1 was born out of, I'm a creative. That's just who I am. I like to make stuff. I like to do outside the box things. And, with the glass industry, there's only so much you could do. And this was before Fixer was really knocking on the door for us to get creative with them. And I just kind of had felt like I'd done everything I could do. I've invented a couple of tools for our industry, and that was a really cool thing. And I felt like, okay, this is feeding that creative need. And then that time had passed, and, I'd gotten our pictures of our showers and stuff published, and that was cool. And that had passed. And then our work was on TV, which was to me the pinnacle. And that was cool. And then that had passed, and it was like, I need something different. And so I paired up with a local college here in town, Baylor, and they were looking for something cool, and switchable tent was brand new at the time. And so we pitched a switchable tent on a coach's window that would let him see down in the practice gym. And then he could push a button through the automation that was in his office. Lights would dim, green lights would come on, speakers, and that piece of glass would turn to opaque. And then we had mounted a projector on the outside, so it'd play a highlight reel on his window. it was really cool. I mean, it was just a phenomenal way to start a project with switchable tint. And so we did that, and it was a cool project. And the guy that was assistant coach called me back, and he's like, "Hey, that was fun. Let's do more." And I was like, "Okay." So we did a couple of other projects, and before we know it, we realized that we're a design company, and we're designing for one of the best track and field programs in the country. And it just kind of turned into an entire company. So we cater to Division I, for the most part, Division I sports programs. Everything is geared and catered to recruiting. So it's locker room remodels, coaches' offices, hallways. You know, we integrate a lot of glass, obviously, because that's a bread and butter that we know a glass guy that can get us stuff pretty cheap. And so, you know, it turned into a whole thing, and it's been a lot of fun. And that piece there kind of started feeding that creative void. The funny part was we started that, and then all of a sudden Fixer Upper hit. So here's this double thing all taken off at once. And we did it. We succeeded to get them both going and keep them going. And, you know, so that's where that thing came from. And it's doing really well. In fact, we were just at Southern Miss about 4 or 5 months ago looking at their football stuff. I don't know if we'll end up doing the work there or not, but it's turned into a pretty cool and fun job.
That's awesome. Yeah, we do all the construction for the Alabama sports and Mississippi State's sports and stuff. They're always trying to one-up each other. I've kind of noticed that. Like,
hard to do with Alabama, though.
There'll be trends. The guy over construction at Alabama was telling me about it. He's like, yeah, we keep an eye out and see what all these other schools are doing and what some NFL locker rooms have going on. But the reason all that kind of came up is they've got like a big common area where the players can go eat and play video games and all that. And they were building a solid glass just in the middle of the room, a one barbershop, so that the players could cut each other's hair.
Oh.
I mean, they're
Crazy.
just always like one thing after another, something.
That's what's kind of cool about that industry is, you know, we come up with something really cool for some of these, especially, you know, a Power 5 school, you know, a big college. And, you know, 4 years down the road, that thing's outdated. So there's room to walk right back in the same place you were at a couple of years ago. And how do you tweak that? And I think what we've gotten really good at is there's other companies that do what we do. We're not obviously the only ones in the game. But we found a really cool way to marriage being able to do something, especially for like a mid-major school. How do you get a big full remodel now and keep that thing looking fresh for 5 years or maybe even 8 years? And that's what we've gotten really good at. And that's what we like about the industry is being able to kind of tweak what some of those big boys are doing. You know, Alabama's going to spend money that we couldn't handle their job. I mean, it just is what it is. And we're aware of that. And there's guys and girls in the game that can, and we respect them and we appreciate that they do that. But those ideas that they've got help us start to kind of create our own versions of it, or we may have our own idea, but, you know, being able to get them something in 3 or 4 years, update it instead of redo it completely. You know, your guys and girls like Alabama, they got the ability and the money to change every 2 years if they really want to. And recruiting is a special game, man. It's a weird world. And when it comes down to 2 or 3 teams, whatever sport it is, 2 or 3 teams are always typically your 2 or 3 teams that everybody wants to play for. Well, what does it come down to? Well, do you have a video game machine in the locker, or, you know, in girl sports, you know, sometimes it's about amenities that you got in the locker room itself on the bathroom side. We've done some softball programs. We've kind of done some really cool stuff in the bathroom where the lockers aren't really that amazing, but from how the girls getting ready for, you know, after practice becomes the important thing. So it's, you know, there's a mindset that goes along with it. It's cool. It's a fun game.
Well, hey, whenever you were at Southern Miss, so I graduated from there, and before I came to work for my dad's glass company, Glass Incorporated, I went to work for a sign manufacturing company called Mitchell Signs, and actually I sold the Eagle Buzzard in the men's locker room at Southern Miss. Did you see that when you were there? Yeah. Had a little piece on that, a lot of piece on that. So anyway, I'm proud of that one still to this day.
She's a little salesman.
Hopefully y'all won't be changing that out. Oh.
We're hoping to get it. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but it's a finicky business. You know, sometimes it's more about who you're using than it is anything else. Just like anything else, I suppose.
Oh yeah. Well, cool deal. So now let's get into the alone effect. Me and Cody have been looking up that a lot
I'm
lately.
interested to hear about this. You said it was like a passion project of yours?
It is, man. The alone effect is it's just one of those things that I've always written. It's just kind of one of those things that's an outlet for me. I paint, I do a little bit of everything, but I've always written poetry, and it's one of those. It's always been for me. I've never really shared much of it, and just like anything else in life, I'm a very cerebral person. I probably internalize way more than I should. And I've gone through bouts of depression. It's just one of those things. There's mental health things that we don't like to talk about, but I'm not afraid to talk about it, and I'm not ashamed of it. I've had some rough times in my life, and in those times there were some dark thoughts, and I've accepted that. This is what it is. And so in those moments, I've written some stuff, and sometimes it's a little darker than what people want to hear, and sometimes it's uplifting. So I had a moment in life where I had somebody really close to me that got in a weird headspace and did some crazy stuff. And, I sat down and talked to him and shared a little bit of my writing with him. And, the feedback was pretty amazing from him. And I thought, well, if that feedback from this is that cool, just again, it's kind of a story. I mean, it's just the way it's written. It rhymes, and that's great, but it's just a story. I feel like if that story could impact this person, then there's no telling who it can impact. And I do think that we live in a time where we're afraid to talk about mental health and how that impacts us on a daily basis. And I think sometimes people are ashamed of it. And I think some folks have a real stereotypical mindset of if somebody's reaching out or saying they have an issue, that maybe they're just looking for attention. And I don't think that's always the case. So it was one of those things. I told the production company I was working with on the Artisan project, I said, hey man, I got a couple of poems. If you guys would be willing to let me read these, I'll do the video editing, just send it all to me. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. So it hasn't really turned anything crazy yet. I've had multiple people reach out, and they want to sit down and tell their story. And so we're working on that right now. We're working through the process of what does that look like? How do we marriage those things? It can't always be a poem. I don't think it always has to be a poem. I think at some point it becomes just tell me your story, And so, if it impacts one person, it's done its job. And if it impacts 100, then wow, that's even better. That's kind of where that thing's at. And it's kind of in the same phase as the Artisan project. I'm trying to keep two companies running. I have a business partner with D1, which is very, very helpful because he manages a lot, and that frees me up to focus on the glass side when it's struggling. So I don't have a lot of time to work on that thing right now, but it's one of those things that I want to see become a very big deal if I can figure that part out.
And I love that. Anything that has to do with people helping people, I love it. I think we should need more of that in this world. And I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but if you got one you'd like to read, I think we're going to post this on YouTube.
I've got nothing in front of me, but if you want to link up, I've got a couple of videos there on YouTube. If you want to link them up, feel free. It's those are things that sometimes are a little bit rough to read too. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes we were getting a couple of cuts early on, and get a little choked up reading some of that stuff, because it does take me back to a time where things were a little bit different, a little bit harder for me. But I'll be posting stuff here and there as we go on, and so yeah, if you want to tag the YouTube link, man, do it for sure.
Heck yeah.
Well, I think it takes a lot of courage to allow yourself to become vulnerable enough to admit that there is a mental health issue. I think that's something that not a lot of people can do, because there is a lot of shame associated with it. So
it is. A lot better if they did.
Yeah, it's something that is not talked about enough, but it's out there way more than we know it is, or we think it is, for sure. So I love that you've done that. That's awesome.
It's a real deal.
I was in a situation where I had somebody. I was in a time where somebody thought that tough love was the way to talk to me in harder times, and that's just not the way that I work. And it almost made me feel ashamed about what I was thinking or how I was thinking, and it does. It makes you not want to talk about it. But once you have somebody close to you kind of do something silly, and it's not silly, it's very serious, but
in my mind, like life goes on. Our hardest and darkest times aren't our last. And so when you go through that, it's a lot easier to say, hey, you're not the only person that's dealt with this, and you're not the only person sitting right here that's dealt with that. And that was kind of a moment where I was like, I got to talk about this a whole lot more. And I'm not ashamed of it. I really never have been, but I was at one time, not from me wanting to talk about it, but from how someone made me feel. And so I think that's a hard thing, and I think if you can get people to open up, Cody, you're right. I think that it does make you feel a lot better. You can sit down and talk to somebody. I've got a therapist, and I talk to her every 2 weeks, and I'm not ashamed of that. There's times where it's just, there's nothing to talk about. How's life? It's great. Everything's fantastic. And there's times where I'm like, we got to talk. Like, this may go longer than an hour. I think that's okay.
I think that you could be an advocate for mental health in our industry. I think that is something that our industry needs, because it's out there.
It's stressful.
It is, and it's just not talked about. It's for whatever reason. So
I tell you, the mind is it's a powerful thing. Like, I was telling Kristen about this as whenever I was kind of reading up on the alone effect, and I was like, the mind it's kind of like a domino effect. Like, for instance, a couple years ago, me and my dad had a bad side-by-side accident. He actually got his arm ripped off, and it severed the artery or whatever. But I saved his life that night. Tied the belt around the arm, got the bleeding quit, got him to the hospital, and they saved his arm and all. But people talk about PTSD, and I never really had anything like that before. But every time I try to go to bed, close my eyes, that's all I can see. It was like playing on a highlight reel. Well, if that's all you see, you can't go to sleep. Well, if you can't go to sleep, you're going to be in a bad mood. You're going to be fatigued. You're going to be tired. The stress of being tired, and it's just like a domino effect. And I guess time more than anything just made that go away for me. That and talking to my friends and family. But, it wasn't that I was, I knew he was fine and saved his arm and everything was great. It's, I wasn't really upset about it, but I couldn't quit seeing it when I closed my eyes. So I couldn't sleep, and not being able to sleep just made things, just snowball. But it's a real thing.
That's the crazy part about it, is you just never know what that one thing is that could be bothering somebody, and I may meet you one time and think, man, this guy's a turd, he's just in a bad mood. And it's because you didn't get a good night's sleep the night before. Sleep deprivation does some crazy stuff to us and to our bodies and to our minds. And so, you're right. You never know what that one thing is. You this amazing thing happened. It was out of a bad experience, but, there was a positive side to it. He survived, and, all these things happen, but that still hits you, you never know, that's the wild part is you never know what's happening in somebody's life, or whether it's good or bad, or what that thing is, but it can be impacting them on so many levels, and you have no clue.
Right.
So Dustin, you have, not only Anderson Glass, but you've got all these other different avenues of business that you're getting into. And were you always like that? Have you always had this entrepreneurial spirit, or was it you started working for your dad and you realized, hey, I need to do something for myself? How did all of this really come to be? Because it's hard to juggle. That's 4 or 5 different things. That's hard to juggle that and have a social life and family life and, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I think I've always kind of hustled. When I was in middle school, there was vending machines outside, and I always had extra change in my pocket, and I'd lend somebody 50 cents today, pay me $1 tomorrow. It's a lot of juice, by the way. That's a pretty ridiculous interest rate. But, my parents were really involved in my life, and my dad coached my baseball teams, but they also were in charge of concession stands at the Little League fields when I was, 13, maybe 14. And so they made me go out, they asked me, they made me, whatever, however you want to put it. They made me go out there and work. And so, I think I've always appreciated money. My parents, growing up in the glass industry, what it's like, you're not hurting for anything, but you're not getting everything you want. We were from by far not rich, but we definitely had everything we wanted or needed, not wanted. I was working from 13 at 15. Was delivering pizzas without a driver's license. My dad had kind of talked to it was a different time then, by the way. My dad had talked to the police, and they said, hey, as long as he's as long as he's going to work, doing his job, and going home and not doing anything silly, then, okay. So, I've kind of always just hustled. It's just a appreciation of a hard-earned dollar. And I think it probably goes all the way back to my dad telling me that my grandfather told him growing up, the only dollar that you'll ever make is the one you work your butt off for. And that's just always been there. It's always been in the back of my mind. And so I don't know if chasing success or whatever that looks like, I don't know if that's always kind of been there, but from the moment that I got my first promotion in retail, that was it. That lit me on fire. I said, well, that feels good. Let's keep doing that. So I think I've just been climbing ever since.
I can tell you, you have a real artsy side about you too. It seems like.
Yeah, that's from my mom. She's a ginger also. She's just a nurturer and loving kind of person. And so, putting your heart into something, I think, gets you to a different level than just putting work into it. So, I think you marriage those two things and it's a different, the results are different.
Perfect combination.
So, Dustin, what advice do you have for our generation and then the generation above us to be able to, how are we going to teach the younger generation to be hungry for the build world? How do we get them interested? And like you said earlier, like bring sexy back to the industry. How do we promote that? What can we do differently that we're not doing right now?
I think that's a great question. And I get asked that a lot, especially at those shows where, you got an industry trade there, whatever that industry trade is. There'll be a guy that's, my dad's age and he'll come to me and, almost verbatim every time it's the same conversation. It's like, hey, what are we going to do with these dadgum millennials? And I'm like, well, what do you mean by dadgum? And well, they're lazy and they're entitled and, communication's poor. They don't listen. There's no loyalty. So, okay, well, that's a lot of descriptive word for dadgum, but okay. What percentage of these millennials, these young folks, would you say are dadgum millennials? And it's always all of them. Okay. So what are you doing to meet them where they're at? Nothing. Why? Well, because what I've been doing for 20 years works. Yeah. So do you still advertise in the phone book? Because I'm curious how it's, working for you, Bill. And usually from there, we'll decide if we're going to continue to have that conversation or not. And a lot of times it opens their eyes. Yeah, I'm not in the phone book anymore. And so I think you got to meet young folks where they're at. I think social media is a great platform to show them what's cool and what's sexy. I post pictures of our work on there all the time. I use my personal page and I use the company's page. Sometimes I think it boils down to, getting other stuff out there. So from a company standpoint, we use a program or an app called GroupMe where everybody can text, iPhones and Androids all kind of work together there. And so I'll ask for finished products of work, send me a picture of the completed shower enclosure or commercial project, whatever that is. And they'll send it to me and I'll post it on the company page. Well, that's exciting for them. Here's the company that I work for being really excited about what we just did. And so, we start posting those up. Well, then I noticed pretty quickly that my guys and girls in the field were starting to have competitions. They started posting pictures of themselves in the photos and they're, dabbing and doing all these things. And we start posting those pictures up. Well, then they start screenshotting them and putting them on their page. And I realized pretty quickly two things were happening. One, I was getting organic content without really having to beg for it or go out and get professional pictures made. And the second thing was I started having employees' friends reach out to me. Hey man, I saw on so-and-so's page that, he was in this $1 million house doing this cool surround on a pool. Like, I want to do that. And I think that's a really simple, easy way to get it in front of, young folks. And then I think the next thing is you got to get those guys and girls that have that mentality of every millennial is a dadgum millennial. And you either got to push them away. And I know that sounds really harsh and hard, but I think everybody knows at the end of the day that if you've got a guy or girl in the building that's running off your young folks, that they can't stay there, they're going to be there for how much longer, and how much longer do you want your company to be there? And I think that's a hard truth, but I think it's one of those ones that's got to be said at some point. And I get asked that a lot. Hey, I got, Bill in the field and he keeps running off on my young folks. And then Bill's either got to change or Bill's got to go, And I hate that for Bill because he's one of those guys that's probably taught a lot of young folks. But, I think it's hard to get the baby boomers and the millennials together without a Generation X person bridging that gap.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the secret, but I think social media is a great way to put it in front of young folks and get them interested, at least get them in the door. From there, you know, you have to build a culture that's conducive to what young folks like. And I think that's a simple thing to do, you know, add technology to your business, some way, form, or fashion, make it fun. I think that's a big thing. And everybody wants to be an individual now. So give them some individuality. You know, our guys and girls can wear any company shirt they want. We've got several. We've done stuff where we let them as a team design a shirt, which I think is fun. It gives them an opportunity to be creative, which obviously is important to me, but it also gives them some feel good about this thing. You know, I've got a guy that works here that makes his own version of Glaser shirts all the time. His mom's got a Cricket, and he's legit. Like, he'll send me a picture. Can I wear this? Yeah, for sure. And, you know, he's made hats, and, you know, I think that's cool. So you just allow for some individuality. So there's a couple of things I think are the start of a foundation. I'm sure that thing will constantly change. And the ability to know that you're going to have to pivot is a huge piece of industry. I mean, I think that's business 101, but you know, well, I've been doing the same thing for 20 years is not, it's not going to work in 2020. It worked in 1999, maybe, but it doesn't work now. So
that's right. So we've talked about, you know, working in family business, working on hit TV shows. We've talked about working with D1 football schools and, you know, all these different things. What's one thing before we get out of here that you would like to kind of leave with our industry? What would you like to tell everybody?
You know, my message is always pretty simple. You know, I'm a transparent person, and I think that goes a long way. So for me, it's practice loyalty. I think that's a very lost piece of humanity these days. I don't think that, you know, we get an application for an employee that they had four jobs. What have you been doing with you? Why didn't you just have two? You know, we would want to know, like, what's wrong with you? Why did you have 4 jobs? And now I get applications with 15 or 20 jobs listed, and that's not abnormal. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that we've lost the ability to understand what loyalty really looks like. And it's not always a two-way street, and I get that. But it is reciprocated a whole lot easier when you feel it, you know? And so when I feel like somebody's loyal to me, my ability to be loyal to them it's a whole lot easier. And I think that works from an employer standpoint too. You know, when they know that I'm going to go work for them and run through a brick wall for them to make sure that they've got a job. And I think right now is a prime aspect of what you do in these crazy times right now is a huge impact on what's going to happen over the next 2 years. Can't tell your business is going to survive, but I know if you're going to war for your boys and girls right now, that they'll go to war for you after this. And so loyalty is one of those things that I think is lost. And I think if I could bring anything back easy, that's the piece I would bring back. I think everything else we've talked about is big and is part of the game. But for me, that's the big one, man. I think loyalty's got to come back. I don't know how to get it there for everybody, but I know what I'm trying to do on my end to get it there.
Maybe that can be the silver lining in all this that's going on right now. We were talking about.
Yeah.
This could be an opportunity to really show your employees how much you do care about them and how loyal you are to them.
Yeah, I think that, and you guys probably know a ton of business owners too that just said, "To heck with it. I'm sorry. You guys are you're all fired. You know, go file unemployment," which sounded great from a standpoint of I don't have to pay anybody and they're going to go get unemployment. But, you know, my middle daughter, I've been trying to file unemployment for her with the state of Texas for 2.5 weeks, and I can't get the site to work. And I'm checking it, you know, off and on, and I can't be the only one that's doing that, you know. So I think that if you were willing in those tough times to say, "Hey, we're here, we're going to fight as long as you guys can fight with us," yeah, I think you're right. I think that, you know, coming out of this, you know, some folks are probably going to not, you know, respond the way you want them to, but I think that your employees are going to see a different side of you. I do. I really think that you might be right. That might be the silver lining out of this whole thing is loyalty comes back, but I think you got to continue it. It's got to be, you know, building that culture is a consistent thing for companies. And if you don't do it, you know, I think you see it.
Yeah, for sure.
What a perfect way to wrap up this episode. Practice loyalty. That's such great advice, Dustin. Thank you so much for being on our show. Before we get out of here, will you tell our listeners where they can find you at on social media?
Social media on Instagram, it's @IM_Dustin. and I'm huge on Instagram, but I love Twitter too. It's Dustin Anderson with a 3 for the E in Anderson. So.
All right. Good deal.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Dustin. I really enjoyed this. I feel like you might be a guy that I would like to hang out with. You seem like an awesome dude.
We should do that. We should get together and have a beer at some point for sure. And listen, you guys are doing a cool thing, man. I think that I think podcasts are a great way to get communication out. I think it's getting there. I think it's one of those things that's kind of new to, especially the contracting industry. So what you guys are doing is awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. I don't know what the following looks like right now, but don't stop. Keep it up no matter what that following looks like. Just stick with it because you already had me hooked. I was listening on the way home from Houston yesterday. I was listening to y'all stuff, and I said, man, this guy is country as hell.
Yeah.
So this is gonna be fun. And my girlfriend was like, you start getting country when you're around country people or you've been drinking. I said, well, tomorrow we'll just have the Texas boy come out at me. And my dad's from Mississippi, so all that kind of starts rolling together.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that advice, and thank you so much for being on our show. This was awesome.
Absolutely.
And after this whole Rona deal is passed, we're coming out to Waco to hang out.
For sure. Let's do it.
We've got an office right. I'm not sure how far it is from Waco. I'd have to look, but Hutto, Texas. We've got an office out there. Yep. So I've got a good reason to come down that way anyway.
That's right.
For sure. Yeah. Austin's a great town to hang out in. So we'll just do Austin outright.
Heck yeah, man.
Sounds good.
And man, what an episode. I know, right? Dustin's such a cool guy. Like, I want to go drink a beer with him.
He is really cool. After this Rona's done, we're absolutely doing that for sure. Like, no doubt about it.
And he's just an hour away from the Hutto office.
From your office, yeah. Perfect. Great excuse. I can't wait to go see that.
We're going to get weird in Austin.
To go get weird. Justin I'm really glad that we did that. He brings a lot to the table. He comes from different sides of the fence. I love that him and I both had that glass background that we could kind of relate to, but then he's also got like this creative side and
Super
design
creative.
and, with the whole, also the mental health awareness, which is very important, not just in our industry, but in our world. And it's not really talked about that much because like he said, there is a lot of shame associated with it, but it's prevalent. It's an issue. It's here and it needs to be talked about. So kudos to him for being
having
vulnerable.
the humility
Yeah.
to do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Being
somebody
vulnerable.
needed to bring it up, and
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Yep. So we hope that you enjoyed what you heard today. I'd be really surprised if you didn't. And if you did, like and subscribe to us. Follow us on all of our social media at Couple of Subs. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And check us out at our website, coupleofsubs.com.
Yep. And if you see one of our posts out there, hit that little share button because then it goes to a lot more people. I just found this out.
Just found this out, Lord.
Yeah, the share button was invented like 3 days ago.
But all right. Yeah. Thank y'all. We appreciate it.
All right. Have a good week.